the homes and estates of Marjorie Merriweather Post. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. In 1914, at just 27 years old, Marjorie Merriweather Post inherited a $27 million fortune from her family's cereal company, making her the wealthiest woman in the world at the time. But rather than being overwhelmed by such immense wealth, Marjorie rose to the occasion with a keen business sense, a flair for hospitality, and an eye for elegance. Over the decades, she would become not only a generous philanthropist and influential society figure, but also the consummate hostess, known for curating unforgettable experiences in settings as dazzling as her guest lists. As her life evolved, so did the architecture around her. From a Gilded Age palace in Palm Beach to a mountaintop retreat in the Adirondacks and a jewel box estate that would later become a museum in Washington, D.C., each of her residences was more than a home. They were stages on which she brought her ideals of beauty, diplomacy, and refined living to life. Here's a look at the remarkable homes of Marjorie Merriweather Post, each one a reflection of her vision, her passions, and the storied life she led. First, Hillwood Estate. Located in northwest Washington, D.C., the Georgian-style mansion was acquired in 1955 and transformed into a showcase for her extraordinary art collections and refined lifestyle. Having collected French antiques since the 1920s, Post's interests expanded dramatically during her third marriage to Joseph E. Davies, U.S. Ambassador to the Soviet Union, 1936 to 1938. During their time in Moscow, Post acquired a vast trove of pre-revolutionary Russian art, purchased through official Soviet channels as the USSR sold imperial and religious treasures to finance industrial development. These acquisitions would form the largest collection of Russian imperial art outside of Russia. At Hillwood, Post curated her French and Russian holdings. The interiors remain arranged much as they were during her lifetime. The French drawing room, used to entertain guests, is decorated with Beauvais tapestries, Sèvres porcelain, and period furniture. The dining room features 18th century carved oak paneling imported from Paris. Post intended Hillwood to serve as a museum after her death, ensuring public access to her collections. Today, the Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens operates according to her wishes, preserving both her opulent lifestyle and her role as a serious collector of decorative arts. Hillwood was Marjorie Merriweather Post's final and most enduring residence. Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago, meaning sea to lake in Spanish, was Marjorie Merriweather Post's most ambitious residential commission. Designed as a grand winter estate, it occupies 17 acres, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to Lake Worth in Palm Beach, Florida. Construction began in 1924 and was completed in 1927 at a cost of approximately $7 million, over $100 million today, adjusted for inflation. The architectural design was executed by Marion Sims Wyeth, a leading figure in the development of Palm Beach's Mediterranean revival style. For the interiors, Post selected Austrian-born theater designer Joseph Urban, known for his opulent and theatrical aesthetic. Together, they created a 114-room residence inspired by Spanish, Venetian, and Moorish influences, complete with imported European materials. These included 15th and 16th century stone from Spanish monasteries, antique paneling, and gilded ceilings. Mar-a-Lago was intended as both a private sanctuary and a venue for large-scale entertaining. Post hosted dignitaries, business leaders, and socialites throughout the winter season, establishing it as a prominent fixture in Palm Beach society. Post maintained a long-term vision for the property. In her will, she bequeathed Mar-a-Lago to the U.S. federal government as a potential winter White House, believing it could serve the nation as an official presidential retreat. However, due to concerns about maintenance costs and logistical difficulties, the government declined the gift and returned the estate to the Post Foundation in 1981. In 1985, the property was sold to Donald J. Trump, who undertook significant renovations and later converted it into a private club while maintaining a private residence within the compound. Mar-a-Lago has since continued to play a high-profile role in American political and social life, though its original identity as a Gilded Age winter palace remains embedded in its architecture and history. Camp Topridge. Camp Topridge was Marjorie Merriweather Post's personal interpretation of Adirondack wilderness living, blending rustic tradition with sophisticated luxury. Located on Upper Street Regis Lake in New York's Adirondack Mountains, the property began as a modest great camp before Post acquired it in the early 1920s and embarked on a significant expansion in 1923. What began as a simple summer lodge was transformed under Post's direction into a 68-building compound. The camp included multiple guest cabins, staff quarters, a main lodge, and specialized structures for entertaining. It featured handcrafted Adirondack-style architecture made of native stone and timber, but the interiors were richly decorated with fine antiques, crystal, and French tapestries, typical of Post's taste for European refinement. Camp Topridge embodied Post's concept of wilderness luxury, offering outdoor activities like hiking, boating, and fishing alongside fine dining and elegant accommodations. It was a seasonal residence, designed for warm weather retreats and social gatherings among a close circle of family and guests. Following Post's death in 1973, the camp was eventually sold to New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller, who used it as a private retreat. Today, Camp Topridge remains a privately owned property, celebrated for its unique combination of Adirondack craftsmanship and Gilded Age opulence. Hobound Estate, Seaccloud 2. This elegant estate in Hobound, Florida, was built in the early 1930s. Though less ornate than Mar-a-Lago, it was still a substantial and well-appointed property, reflecting Post's preference for gracious, comfortable living, even in more relaxed settings. It served as an intermediary residence during the periods before and after her time at Mar-a-Lago. The Hobound home embodied refined coastal luxury and offered a more understated counterpoint to her palatial Palm Beach estate. While not as frequently documented or preserved as her other residences, the estate represents another chapter in Post's seasonal migration between homes. Palm Beach Mansion, pre-Mar-a-Lago. Before commissioning the construction of Mar-a-Lago, Marjorie Merriweather Post owned another prominent mansion in Palm Beach during the early 1920s. She sold this earlier estate in order to build Mar-a-Lago, which she envisioned as a grander, more enduring winter retreat. The sale helped fund the ambitious construction of the 114-room Mediterranean Revival estate that would become one of her most iconic properties. Her New York City apartment at 1107 Fifth Avenue. One of the most distinctive homes Marjorie Merriweather Post lived in was a 54-room triplex apartment at 1107 Fifth Avenue in New York City. Built in the early 1920s, this apartment was located on the top 3 floors of a new 14-story building at the corner of Fifth Avenue and East 92nd Street. It was created as part of a unique deal. Post sold her previous home on that same corner, the I. Townsend Burden Mansion, but only on the condition that her new residence would be constructed atop the new building and that she could keep her East 92nd Street address. Designed to replicate many features of her former mansion, the apartment was one of the first penthouses in New York and remains the largest ever built in the city. It contained 54 rooms, including 16 fireplaces, 23 staff bedrooms, a flower room, a silver vault, a wine room, and a large ballroom-like foyer with a sweeping staircase and an arched window overlooking Central Park. The apartment also included a private entrance, lobby, and elevator, rare features even for Fifth Avenue. Post lived in the apartment during her marriages to Edward B. Close and later E.F. Hutton. She leased the space for $75,000 a year, about $1.35 million today, and remained there until 1942. After she moved out, the apartment sat vacant for years. By the early 1950s, it was considered impractical for the post-war era, and the building's upper floors were reconfigured into smaller units. While most of the original interiors were lost, during the conversion, a few elements survive. The breakfast room was carefully removed and later reinstalled at her Hillwood Estate in Washington, D.C., where it remains on display. Some rooms, with French paneling and original mantels, also remain in the current penthouse apartments. One of New York's most opulent residences, offers a glimpse into the transitional period between Gilded Age mansions and luxury apartment living. Seaccloud Yacht, originally Hussar 5. Though not a residence in the traditional sense, the Seaccloud, originally named Hussar Fiefs, is often regarded as Marjorie Merriweather Post's floating palace. Built in 1931, this 316-foot sailing yacht was at the time the largest private yacht in the world. It was commissioned by Post and her then-husband, financier E.F. Hutton. Constructed in Kiel, Germany, by the Friedrich Krupp Germania Werft shipyard, the vessel was designed to be both a long-range cruiser and a symbol of high luxury. Its interiors were styled after Louis XV, featuring crystal chandeliers, silver-plated plumbing fixtures, and elaborately carved wood paneling. The ship had accommodations for 64 guests and required a crew of 60. The couple used the Hussar 5 to travel extensively with their daughter, Nedenia Hutton, later known as actress Dina Merrill, to destinations such as Haiti, Hawaii, Alaska, the Galapagos, and the South Pacific. After Post divorced Hutton in 1935 due to his infidelities, she renamed the yacht Seaccloud and retained ownership. In 1937, her third husband, Joseph E. Davies, was appointed U.S. Ambassador to the Soviet Union by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. During his diplomatic service, the Seaccloud informally served as a U.S. state yacht, hosting European dignitaries and members of royalty in ports such as Leningrad. With the onset of World War II, Post offered the ship to the U.S. government. In 1942, it was commissioned into naval service. Post briefly reacquired the yacht in 1946, but soon sold it. In 1955, it was purchased by Rafael Trujillo, dictator of the Dominican Republic, who renamed it Angelita after his daughter. His son, Ramfis Trujillo, later used the yacht as a private party venue. The ship underwent a series of ownership changes and name changes, Patria and Tarna. By the late 1970s, it had deteriorated significantly. In 1978, a group of German investors purchased and restored the yacht, returning its original name, Seaccloud. It was refitted for luxury cruises, with additional staterooms added to expand capacity. Much of the original craftsmanship was preserved. Today, Seaccloud sails as part of Seaccloud Cruises, hosting up to 64 passengers. It remains one of the most historic and visually striking vessels still in operation. If you'd like to explore more about the life, residences, and remarkable art collections of Marjorie Merriweather Post, check out my other videos about her life and homes, as well as the book, The Houses and Collections of Marjorie Merriweather Post by Kate Markert. I'll include the link below.